Speaker, this is our first week back in session after the spending of the holidays in our districts. While we were meeting with our constituents and enjoying the company of our loved ones, the federal bureaucracy was firing on all cylinders, cranking out thousands of pages of regulations. Mr. Speaker, I hold in my hand what our regulators were doing over Christmas Eve. And in my other hand, I'm holding 298 pages of what our federal regulators were doing on New Year's Eve. This breakneck speed of activity deep within the bowels of our executive branch capped off a record year for the Federal Register, an official record of government's regulatory and other actions. The grand total for 2015 was 82,035 pages of regulations. This leaves the current administration with the annual page count of nearly 80,000 per year and puts it on pace to contribute more pages of regulations to the Federal Register than any other administration in American history. Mr. Speaker, this is a perversion of our Founding Fathers' intent and is the disservice to the American people. Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution vests all legislative power in Congress with the United States, Congress of the United States, not with regulatory agencies. Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution vests all the power to make all laws in Congress of the United States and not with regulatory agencies. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution clearly states that the President shall take care that that laws be faithfully executed. That means an executive agency execute the laws that Congress intended, not that they make their own. Mr. Speaker, there is no ambiguity. Federal laws get made right here on this floor and in the other chamber across the rotunda and nowhere else. But over the past 228 years, the founding principles have been manipulated. With this massive expansion of the federal government's role during the New Deal, agencies were awarded rulemaking authority through the acts of Congress. This statutory authority was granted to allow our federal agencies to better implement the law in a growing, complex nation. But it was not a blank check. Unfortunately, far too many here in Congress have been complicit in delegating our sacred lawmaking authority to legions of unelected bureaucrats. How can this be? We are the first branch of government, the branch that is closest to the people. We are directly accountable to our constituents. And it is because of that accountability we must reclaim that constitutional duty to make all laws. That is why I'm a proud original co-sponsor of the REINS Act of 2015 and why I voted to pass this important bill last year. The REINS Act takes an important step of requiring congressional approval of all major rules. This is a huge improvement over the current status quo under the Congressional Review Act. The default standard for all major rules should be rejection unless the congressionally approved, not acceptance until rejection. The Congressional Review Act is a failed attempt to reclaim our exclusive legislative authority. Rejecting one single rule on ergonomic chairs in 20 years is simply unacceptable. We need laws with more teeth. The bills we passed this week, including the Scrub Act of 2015, will help in this effort. Mr. Speaker, something needs to change. Churning out thousands of rules and tens of thousands of pages each and every year is hamstringing our economy and crushing our businesses. According to a study done by the National Association of Manufacturers, complying with the federal regulations cost Americans $2.028 trillion in lost economic growth each and every year. That's 12% of our GDP down the drain. As a former small business owner, I can tell you that mom and pop shops aren't poring over each and every issue of the Federal Register, and they sure aren't doing it on Christmas Eve. Unlike large corporations that can afford armies of attorneys to navigate the complex federal bureaucracy, small businesses are left hanging out to dry. As the people's house, we are advocates for the people we represent. We serve them. We are accountable to them. We owe it to the people to go on record and vote on major rules that impact their daily lives. I challenge any president or elected official to say that the American people don't deserve the right to hold their government accountable